I would describe us as an all-American family.
Bill and Christine Kochs had it all. Good jobs, 3 kids, family vacations.
I would do it all over again. I absolutely had a fairy tale life.
Until a year into their youngest son Stephen's first deployment in Afghanistan. He admitted on the phone for the first time to his mother he was scared with the increased number of IEDs.
And he said, I don't know how much longer my luck is going to hold out. He actually said that to me, and my heart sunk.
A month later, with just a few weeks to go before returning home, the Kochs heard their doorbell ring.
The reaction, it becomes so surreal. Yeah. And you're looking at 2 guys that are pale because they have to tell you the worst news that they can ever deliver to the people that are going to be hurt the most.
A suicide bomber had blown up a vehicle at Stephen's base, killing him and another soldier.
I kept stopping him, and I kept saying, you're at the wrong house. You're the wrong soldier.
Stephen's death hit this close-knit family hard, especially his older sister, Lynn.
It was very stressful for her to deal with right from the beginning.
Lynn was in denial for a long time.
Her parents tried to help, asking her to move back home. She started therapy, but she continued to withdraw, even pulling out of events to honor her brother.
She sent an email, Mommy, I finally realized Stephen's gone. And 4 months later, she was gone.
Calling it cruel deja vu, the Kochs again found themselves answering the door in the middle of the night. This time, 2 police officers told them Lynn had taken her own life overdosing on pills.
And I said, wait a minute, are you trying to tell me my daughter is dead? And she said, yes, ma'am, I am. And I just crumbled to the floor.
The Kochs are not alone. Experts tell the News 4i team they are seeing an increase in cases of military family members killing themselves, but no one is keeping track.
We don't have good research that would point to unique risks in certain family members about a suicide in a family.
Dr. Stephen Kochs is with the Center for the Study of Traumatic Stress. He's heading one of the largest congressionally funded studies looking at how family members grieve after someone dies in the military.
If certain groups are particularly resilient, we want to understand what can lead to resilience and how could programs better support health in the community after a death.
So far, he's interviewed about 850 adults who lost a service member since 9/11. Dr. Kochs hopes results from the study will help identify those most at risk.
It's heartbreaking. It hurts every single day.
The Kochs admit after losing 2 children, there are days when they think about suicide.
It's tempting, but you know what the other sacrifices are. You know what the other agony is going to cause.
Instead, they push on for their surviving son, Billy, for each other, and to honor the memory of both Lynn and Stephen.
Stephen volunteered for the service. We've been drafted. That's how we look at it.
Hoping to raise awareness about the struggles so often missed inside the all-American family. At the national headquarters for the Veterans Administration, there's a plaque to care for him who shall borne the battle and for his widow and his orphan. But some of those left behind say the support is not there.
He'd grab me in the kitchen and he'd dance, and he was just, he was just lovable.
Kim Ruocco says her husband John flew helicopters in the Marine Corps for 15 years. 3 months after his final deployment, John killed himself after struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression.
I just would say I just want to die just because I didn't want to feel that pain. You just don't want to feel the pain.
And I asked him, I said, do you have a gun with you? And he said, yes.
Don Lipstein was the last person to speak with his son Josh.
And I said, is it loaded? And he said, yes. I said, can you just please take the bullets out? He said, I can't do that, Dad.
After 2 tours in Iraq with the Navy, Josh had become addicted to painkillers resulting from surgery that ended his naval career.
When it's a suicide in the military, it becomes so much more complicated. There's guilt, shame, there's just, there's anger, a lot of anger.
Kim and Don are part of a growing group of military families called suicide survivors. And they say almost as soon as the funeral is over, they're no longer connected to the military and are left on their own to battle their grief.
And I think we are kind of doing a switch there. I think we realize how important families are, and that that they didn't sign up for this but went along for the ride.
Janet Kemp is the director of the VA's National Mental Health Program for Suicide Prevention. Both she and the Department of Defense tell the I-Team they're changing how the military combats suicide and its impact on families, creating a 24-hour crisis line, which Kemp says is for anyone associated with the military. But some families say it's just not enough, resulting in devastating consequences.
I consider my daughter a casualty of this war.
Christine and Bill Kochs say they lost 2 children in the war. Stephen, an Army gunner killed in Afghanistan, and his older sister, Lynn, who committed suicide following her brother's death.
They give you a list of doctors to see, or try this group or try that group, and there's very little follow-up.
The Kochs turned to a nonprofit group of volunteers called Hope for the Warriors.
This is what we've done to try to cling on to life, because the government certainly doesn't care. We are no longer considered military.
I do feel like the siblings are the ones I worry about the most.
Kim says unlike spouses and children, siblings tend to be forgotten. She and Dawn now counsel all types of family members coping with military suicides for another community service organization called TAPS, or the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors.
We get at least 2 calls a day from a brand new suicide.
A growing list of home front casualties in a battle with no real end in sight. Tours in Iraq and Afghanistan brought Jake Wood and Clay Hunt together.
Clay and I served together in the Marine Corps from 2005 to 2009.
That bond continued after returning home from war when they created Team Rubicon, a nonprofit response team made up of military veterans using their battlefield skills in disaster zones such as the earthquake in Haiti and tornadoes in Oklahoma. But those humanitarian efforts could not erase the wounds of war for Clay, who battled depression.
He struggled and grappled with the idea that he came home, that he survived, and many of our friends didn't.
Jake says he watched his best friend grow more isolated, even after moving closer to home in Texas.
He hadn't yet found anyone that could be in his support network that could relate to his experiences overseas.
In March 2011, Clay Hunt took his own life, leaving friends and family wondering what they could have done. It was at his memorial that Jake realized there had actually been another support group for Clay, but he never even knew it existed.
There were 3 Marines that all lived within 10 miles of where Clay was, and these were 3 Marines that we had actually served with together in Iraq.
And that was the inspiration for PAUSREP, a mobile app that helps veterans find each other in their own communities. PAUSREP is a military term for position reports sent out by patrols in the battlefield to let headquarters know their location.
This generation has grown up, at the doorstep of technology, and they've had video games and computers and cell phones in their hands from the moment they entered junior high.
It's an awesome app.
Janet Kemp is with the VA's National Mental Health Program for Suicide Prevention. She says while the VA is making progress with suicide education and new resources like a crisis hotline, the process for getting treatment can still be too burdensome. She thinks nonprofits can fill in some of those gaps.
And we recognize that it's going to take a community to help these folks get back and get assimilated. Certainly, if someone develops a communication app or an awareness app, we'll promote it and we'll help people use it.
We set out to solve the problem using the most ubiquitous tool on the planet, our smartphones.
Jake recently brought his idea before a Senate panel, hoping to get federal support.
We think that the first line of defense towards veteran suicide is having a peer support group that is there to help support people when they're at their lowest point.
Not only does PAUSREP use GPS technology to help vets find each other,
so if you want to show a veteran your exact location, you can what we call pop a flare.
It will also direct them to local nonprofit resources. The app is currently in a test phase with a small group of users, but Jake hopes to reach 500,000 veterans over the next 18 months.
We do think that we can make a difference. We do think that we can help solve this problem.
Creating a mobile band of brothers battling a war here on the home front.